Hey everyone, let's jump right into today's explainer, where we're going to treat hustle culture as what it really is, not just some trendy buzzword, but an actual pathogen. We're going to look at chronic stress as the biological disease it causes, and most importantly, we're going to lay out some actionable boundary setting as your prescribed treatment to fight back. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the reality of hustle culture. Second, the anatomy of modern stress. Third, recognizing professional fatigue. Fourth, the 4A's framework. And finally, how to set boundaries without the guilt. All right, let's kick things off with part one, the hustle culture reality. Look, if you're feeling completely exhausted right now, I want you to know you are entirely validated. Because right now, a staggering 66% of US employees report feeling burned out in some way. Think about that. That is literally 2/3 of the workforce running on fumes, just trying to keep up with impossible standards. And let's zoom out for a second, because on a macroeconomic scale, that individual exhaustion translates to a massive, massive hit. We are talking about $438 billion lost globally in productivity just last year. This is directly tied to diminished employee well-being and the sheer cost of pushing humans way beyond our natural limits. The global reality we're dealing with is honestly kind of bleak. Only a tiny 21% slice of the global workforce is actually engaged in what they do. A massive 62% are simply not engaged, just going through the motions. And 17% are actively disengaged. The vast majority of us feel completely disconnected from our daily jobs. So, what's the root cause of all this disengagement? Well, it's hustle culture. It's this overarching environment and mindset that glorifies constant work and literally equates your self-worth with your output. Sure, it might initially spark ambition, but ultimately, it triggers a progressive, unavoidable decline in your physical and emotional reserves. Now, what's really fascinating is how this pressure morphs depending on where you live and work. Down in Australia, half the workforce reports burnout from inappropriate workloads. Across Europe, there's fierce pushback, with 34% saying they'd outright resign over US-style intense corporate hours. Over in North America, 54% experience severe stress spikes, mainly from job insecurity and layoffs. And globally, Gen Z professionals and university students are bearing the brunt of it, with up to 68% reporting burnout. So the landscape of exhaustion is universal, but the specific triggers are highly regional. Moving right along to part two, the anatomy of modern stress. To really understand why you feel stuck, we need to look at acute versus chronic stress. Acute stress is just a brief adaptive survival mechanism, right? It's that rapid cortisol spike that helps you nail a presentation, followed by a quick recovery back to baseline. But chronic stress, that is a maladaptive state. It results in continuous cortisol exposure, permanently rewiring your HPA axis, and essentially preventing your brain from ever shutting off the alarm. You absolutely have to understand what modern stress actually does to your body. Burnout is a systemic physiological failure. It is not a lack of willpower. Just look at the pathology. Chronic stress aggressively degrades your cardiovascular system. In fact, the Whitehall 2 study showed a 68% increased risk of coronary heart disease in stressed adults under 50. And at the cellular level, it literally accelerates cellular aging by shortening the telomeres on your chromosomes. You are quite literally aging your body from the inside out. Which brings us to part three, recognizing professional fatigue. We can actually track the exact progression of fatigue across your physical, cognitive, and behavioral domains. In the early warning phase, tension headaches meet minor memory lapses, and you might cope by skipping breaks or relying entirely on your fifth iced coffee of the day. By the intermediate phase, that escalates into insomnia, persistent anxiety, and social withdrawal. And finally, in chronic burnout, you're looking at severe fatigue, recurrent nightmares, and total helplessness. Skipping lunch to cope with a declining working memory isn't a badge of honor. It's a behavioral maladaptation pushing you toward complete systemic breakdown. So, with this alarming biological reality clearly established, we have to ask a really vital question about our daily survival in modern academic and corporate institutions. How do we actually survive this? That perfectly leads us into part four, the 4S framework. These are the 4 types of stress management that actually work to help you regain control of your environment. Number 1, avoid. Systematically eliminate optional demands and just say no to non-essential tasks. 2, alter. Respectfully negotiate deadlines and clearly communicate your limits. 3, adapt. Reframe your perfectionism and ask yourself, is this stressor really going to matter in 5 years? And 4, accept. Emotionally process the organizational changes or macroeconomic factors that you simply cannot control. And finally, part 5, setting boundaries without guilt. Learning how to set workplace boundaries without feeling guilty requires you to abandon the culture of guilt entirely. Protecting your personal time is a biological requirement for sure. It is not a luxury. This is absolutely crucial when navigating hierarchical power dynamics with managers or academic advisors who hold significant influence over your career path. You must protect your cognitive resources. If you're at absolute maximum capacity, use this exact tactical script. Just say, I'm happy to lead this project, but to do so, we will need to adjust the timelines on my existing deliverables to maintain the quality of both. By saying this, you collaboratively reframe a supervisor's request as a resource allocation decision rather than a flat-out refusal. It shows you care about quality, but you are firm on your bandwidth. Or, what about when you're faced with a sudden, unexpected demand in a meeting or an email? Use this script. I want to review my current commitments to ensure I can give this the attention it needs. I will get back to you with an answer by tomorrow morning. This brilliantly disrupts your automatic habit of saying yes. It gives you the psychological pause you need to step back and evaluate your actual limits without caving to immediate pressure. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on today. Look at your daily routine and ask yourself, are you designing an environment that respects your physiological limits, or are you pushing your human system to the absolute breaking point? True productivity requires a fundamental redefinition of work. It requires you to respect your biology. So take these tools, set your boundaries without the guilt, and start protecting your biological health today.